in Akombong as well. So, and I think it's important because it's a little known fact that there were different tribes that made up what we now know as Maroon. So, as an ASAFO, a warrior, so I don't think you even explain the term ASAFO. Asa is the Twi term for war, and Fo is the term for people. So loosely translated in English, it means warrior people. And the education system that was instituted for communities, for survival purposes initially, was as a warrior and a priest. These were the two approaches we used to fight colonialism and embed a spirit of resistance and rebellion in our children.
So these are ASAFO, that term has always been part of the Maroon.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at Moortown, that we've got a yard, a building called the ASAFO Yard. It's spelled like this. So ASAFO is spelled ASAFO, and ASAFO Yard is spelled ASAFU. ASAFU. So it's the same term. You'll find the Sankofa bird. You'll find a number of Andinka symbols painted outside that building, and it was the area that we used to plan our military strategies or try to unify, because what you said is right. We're from two separate sides of the islands, and we'd use the abeng and the talking drums to speak with each other. I mean, the Cromanti language has been lost now. My great-grand spoke it, but I think that generation, we've not done a good job in our generation of maintaining the language, to be fair. And I think maybe moving forward in terms of our education, I think it's something that needs to be brought back in terms of at least as a piece of academic research to have it charted, because we've got in most Maroon communities, you've got people maybe over the age of 70 that still understand and speak it briefly, but under that no one speaks it. So it's a dying language, if you like. And
that's a mixture of all the different tongues.
All Western Central tongues.
But it was
primarily Congolese, Ghanaian, Nigerian and Benin.
Yeah. Okay. And this was spoke up until when would you say that? Because I've never heard of it. Outside of you telling me about it, I had never heard of it.
It would have been used in Maroon communities quite...
So this was the language of Maroon communities in Jamaica?
Yeah.
Cromanti.
Yeah, Cromanti. But obviously when you have successive slave revolts or slave escaping, the language would have been diluted each time you've got successive wave of freed slaves coming in. Yeah. So that's why the language hasn't been upheld in maybe the way that we would want in terms of heritage. So I mean, one of the things I wanted to start with actually is a quote from Kwame Nkrumah that states, "I'm not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me." And I think that's the ethos of Maroonage that I know. So I wanted to, I mean, I've spoken briefly about the alternative history, and I wanted to kind of also go into...
So just remember, I was asking, how did we get all these communities everywhere? You kind of answered that, right? But they're not linked.
No, the ones in Jamaica were linked, and I think... And
the rest of them, they don't really know about each other. Suriname don't know about the Jamaican one.
They wouldn't have known until... So we have...
so they won't speak the same language, obviously. There's no actual cultural link. It's just...
I mean, this is why I mentioned the Suriname Maroons, because they had the Dutch that was colonizing them, and once they'd kicked the Dutch out, they'd maintained they all still have Twi names up until now. There was a expo in Ghana on Friday, just gone, and there was a delegation of 15 Suriname Maroons came to Ghana for cultural exchange for their independence. And what's clear is that they've kept the Anansi stories. So I grew up on Anansi stories, Anansi the Spider.
I love Anansi.
And obviously over time, I mean, I tell my daughter Anansi stories. Sometimes I make them up. Like to meet her needs at whatever time. But what we find in the Anansi stories now in Suriname, they haven't changed too much from the Ghanaian ones, whereas the Jamaican ones have changed, where we've kind of had a lot more admixture of people groups, which means the stories that we tell each other change over the centuries. But you're right, the Cromanti isn't spoken, and there isn't a kind of a unified language for all Maroons. I mean, similarly, that we different Maroon communities have different ID cards. And this is something that I would want to push for in terms of we shouldn't have different ID cards as Maroons. Maroons in Jamaica should have the same ID sovereign cards as Maroons in the rest of the Caribbean and across the diaspora, in my opinion. But obviously each community runs autonomously. I mean, Akompong and Flagstaff, former Kodjo Town, have worked quite well in collaboration, because when Maroons was deported, the ones that weren't deported made their way to Akompong. So there are close ties in that sense. But apart from that, for a long period of time, there wouldn't have been huge amounts of contact unless there's a war effort.
Go, yeah.
So the practices that you were saying that are done in Jamaica and Africa, is it the same as what's been gone like over into Brazil, the other place?
I mean, Brazil's interesting because, again, the Maroons in Brazil don't all have just West African backgrounds. They come from all parts of West Africa as opposed to just Ghana. Whereas what you'll find in the Americas, like North America and the Caribbean, there's a strong presence of Ghanaians.
Okay.
People from, I mean, Akan Empire, which would have been Benin, Nigeria, Ghana, and bits of Mali at that time. So you've got closer cultural links in the Caribbean than you do with kind of the.
I thought there was more like Nigerian. I thought it was a lot of Nigerian type. So you're saying there was more Ghanaian?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the I guess the culture, some of the cultural practices you'll find more prevalent in Ghana, and you know, you're right. There are a lot of Nigeria. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if majority of people in Jamaica do the DNA, it'll be Nigerian Ghana. That we're fine.
Yes.
But generally, because of the culture that came across, and that might not be because of numbers. That might just be because
just most
Nanani, the governance systems in most Maroon communities was Ghanaian.
Influences
so that wherever you came from in Africa, and if you got to a Maroon community in Jamaica, you'd been under an Akan, ASAFO governance.
It's like Jamaicans in general, innit? It's small population but big influence.
Right. So